Ki-woo Kim is a young man living in poverty with his family in a simple place. His sister, Ki-young Kim, his mother, Chung-suk Kim, and his father, Ki-tae Kim, live in a cluttered unit where they struggle to get a free Wi-Fi signal nearby for internet access. They earn money by folding pizza boxes. When their boss arrives, Chung-suk Kim argues with her because she criticizes their poor work. Ki-woo and Ki-young frame their co-worker for having a bad reputation and suggest firing him, with Ki-woo taking his place. As the day ends, while the family eats, they are visited by Ki-woo's wealthy friend, Min-hyuk, who brings them a gift from his grandfather. It's a rock believed to bring wealth and prosperity to its owner. The friends step out to drink alcohol where Min-hyuk tells Ki-woo about his student, Dahae, a daughter of a very rich family whom he has feelings for. He says Ki-woo should replace him as her English tutor because he is leaving the country to study there. Ki-woo knows he isn't qualified because he didn't go to college, but Min-hyuk has a plan. The siblings go to an internet cafe to forge Ki-woo's college document. Ki-woo went to Park family's house for an interview and assist him by their housekeeper Moon-gwang and then introduced himself as Kevin. Mrs. Yeon-kyo Park said he should be at the level of Min-hyuk and mentioned she would observe their first lesson. Ki-woo did his best while teaching Dahae to get the job, which he did. Mrs. Park paid him a large amount, and her young son Dasong arrived and disrupted them. Mrs. Park shared Dasong's drawings and, as she escorted him out the gate, she mentioned Dasong needed an art tutor. Ki-woo suggested a cousin's old classmate named Jessica who studied in America. Next day, Ki-woo returned with Ki-young posing as Jessica with fake documents. Ki-woo taught Dahae while Ki-young was interviewed. Dahae revealed Dasong only pretended to like art and asked if Ki-woo was interested in Ki-young, but he declined and laughed. They bonded, leading to a kiss. Mrs. Park and Ki-young approached Dasong, but Ki-young dismissed Mrs. Park to win Dasong over. Mrs. Park and Moon-gwang saw Ki-young and Dasong sitting together as they returned from the basement to get drinks. Ki-young teased Mrs. Park about something odd in Dasong's drawings, surprising Mrs. Park. Dong-ik Park, her husband, arrived and instructed their driver to take Ki-young home. Ki-young secretly left her underwear in the car after asking the driver to drop her off at the station. The Kim family was happily eating at a buffet and discussing their next steps. When Mr. Park saw the underwear in his car, he shared it with Mrs. Park and they talked about how perverted their driver was and the unpleasant things he was doing in the car. They even suspected he was using cocaine. Ki-young pretended she had just arrived, but in truth, she was eavesdropping. As Mrs. Park walked her out of the gate, she asked Ki-young if anything had happened when the driver took her home, but Ki-young said no. She mentioned that the driver had already been fired because of an incident. When she had the chance, Ki-young suggested her uncle from America for the job, but in reality, it was her father. Although Mr. Kim knew how to drive, Ki-woo had to teach him the technology of the modern car. One day, Mr. Kim went to Mr. Park's workplace to pick him up. While on their way home, Mr. Park praised Mr. Kim for his excellent driving skills and his knowledge of the routes. Next, the Kim family planned how to get Moon-gwang fired so Chung-suk could replace her. Ki-woo learned from Dahae that their Moon-gwang was allergic to peach fruit. So the next day, Ki-woo collected peach dust and secretly sprinkled it on Moon-gwang's back as he was about to go home. While Mrs. Park was on her way home from buying groceries, Mr. Kim told her that Moon-gwang had tuberculosis because when he went to the hospital for his annual medication, he overheard Moon-gwang talking about it on the phone. He also explained that tuberculosis is contagious. All of these scenarios had been rehearsed at their house with Ki-woo's help. As they were about to arrive home, he contacted Ki-young and once again, Ki-young sprinkled peach dust on Moon-gwang, so when they arrived, they found her coughing. Mr. Kim put ketchup on a tissue in the trash can to make it look like blood for added believability. Afraid that Mr. Park might get angry about the illness entering their home, Mrs. Park told Mr. Kim not to tell her husband about it. Eventually, Mrs. Park spoke to Moon-gwang and fired her, making it seem like she had quit. While on a trip, Mr. Park asked Mr. Kim if he knew of any restaurants, and they talked about Moon-gwang who got fired. Mr. Park felt sorry because she was hardworking and a good cook. Mr. Park mentioned that it's hard to find a new maid, so Mr. Kim gave him a business card for a service company that his family made up. Later, Mrs. Park called the number, and Ki-young pretended to ask for information about hiring a maid, like their income level. Chung-suk successfully got hired. She served fruits to Dahae and Dasong, and acted like she didn't know Ki-woo and Ki-young. When Mr. Park arrived, Dasong greeted him and noticed Chung-suk smelled like Jessica. The Kim family celebrated because everyone had jobs. One day, the Park family prepared for a camping trip. Chung-suk helped pack, and they left. The Kim family stayed in the big house, making it their own. That night, they drank and talked about work, gave opinions on their bosses, and didn't care about the mess. After a few moments, the doorbell rang, and they discovered it was Moon-gwang, wearing a raincoat because it was raining. She said she had forgotten something when she left. The three hid, and they decided to let her in, so Moon-gwang went down to the basement, but after some time, Chung-suk followed her in. She saw Moon-gwang pushing a cabinet, which she helped her with when Moon-gwang asked for help. They found a secret passage, so she followed Moon-gwang while the three followed them secretly and found her husband, Gi-yeon-se, hiding in a secret bunker since the previous owner moved out. Moon-gwang said she still had contact with Dasong, so she knew they weren't home. She also cut the CCTV cable so they wouldn't know she came. Moon-gwang said the Park family didn't know about the secret bunker because the previous owner didn't say anything about it. Moon-gwang asked Chung-suk to let them stay there for a while because, even though it's been 4 years, her husband's creditors are still looking for him. She also offered money, but Chung-suk plans to call the police. The three fell down the stairs, so Moon-gwang recorded them and found out they were family. Moon-gwang understood what happened. When they talked to Moon-gwang about it, she threatened to send the video to their master. The Kim family was taken hostage while the couple was relaxing and mocking them. Moon-gwang took another video, but when they got the chance, they attacked the couple and fought over the cell phone. Ki-young went to kitchen and grabbed some peaches and placed them on Moon-gwang, causing her to lose consciousness. They caught the two, but Mrs. Park called and said they were coming home because the river where they were camping had overflowed, and she asked them to cook ramdon. Chung-suk and Ki-young quickly cleaned up their mess, and Chung-suk started cooking right away while Mr. Kim and Ki-woo took the couple back to the bunker and tied them up. With no time left, Ki-young hid under the table in the living room, and Ki-woo hid under Dahai's bed while putting back her diary. Moon-gwang woke up and hurried back upstairs, but Chung-suk noticed and kicked her, causing her to fall down the stairs and hit her head. Gi-yeon-se shared with Mr. Kim a light switch upstairs that he used to communicate with Moon-gwang using codes. Mr. Kim tied Gi-yeon-se to a pipe again to prevent him from escaping. Mrs. Park told Chung-suk about an incident with Dasong when he was in first grade where he saw a ghost in the basement on his birthday while secretly eating cake at night. When everyone was about to go to sleep, Ki-woo and Mr. Kim secretly went to Ki-young's hiding place. Dasong went to their courtyard with a tent to continue their camping. Mr. and Mrs. Park followed to check on Dasong. The couple lay on the sofa in the living room to watch over Dasong. They talked about Mr. Kim's unpleasant smell, which Mr. Kim overheard. Mr. Park started touching Mrs. Park's chest, and the two of them romantically touching each other. When the couple fell asleep, the three tried to escape but were almost caught when Dasong's flashlight woke the couple up but they didn't notice them. Nevertheless, they successfully left the house and ran away in the rain. They stopped to rest, and Mr. Kim mentioned he had a plan when Ki-young asked what happened in the bunker and what their next move was. They went home and found their house flooded. On the other hand, Moon-gwang woke up and tried to free Gi-yeon-se, but she was very dizzy and told her husband that Chung-suk pushed her before she died. The Kim family tried to save their belongings but only managed to rescue a few items and the stone. Meanwhile, Gi-yeon-se managed to free himself. They spent the night in an evacuation center, where Mr. Kim admitted he didn't really have a plan when Ki-woo asked. Ki-woo said he would take care of everything since he was the one who brought them into this situation. The next day, the couple checked on Dasong in the tent. Mrs. Park called Ki-young and invited her to Dasong's birthday party, which would start at 1 p.m. Dahai also suggested inviting Ki-woo. Mrs. Park got ready to go grocery shopping with Mr. Kim, whom she had already spoken to. Before leaving, Mrs. Park gave Chung-suk instructions on what needed to be taken care of. Mrs. Park and Mr. Kim went to a supermarket, where she bought meat, seafood, and alcoholic drinks. Meanwhile, Chung-suk set up the tables in the courtyard. On their way back, Mrs. Park smelled Mr. Kim, who was wearing clothes from the evacuation center, which Mr. Kim noticed. At the Park's house, Ki-woo and Dahai were kissing, and then Ki-woo asked Dahai if he belonged there. He took the stone from his bag and said he was going down. Mr. Park and Mr. Kim were hiding behind tall grass, dressed in tribal costumes. Mr. Park explained that they would surprise Dasong by pretending to attack Ki-young when she brought the cake for Dasong to blow out the candles. Ki-young and Chung-suk secretly discussed what to do about the couple in the bunker. Mrs. Park arrived and asked for a favor from Ki-young to bring the cake. Ki-woo went to the bunker with the stone and saw Moon-gwang lying, but Gi-eun-se tied a rope around his neck. He escaped when Gi-eun-se tried to hit him with the stone, but as he tried to climb out, the rope caught him, and he fell. Gi-eun-se hit his head twice with the stone. Gi-eun-se took a knife and went to the party. When Ki-young was bringing the cake to Desong, Gi-eun-se stabbed her, causing Desong to faint. Chung-suk grabbed an axe and attacked Gi-eun-se, and they started to fight. Mr. Park took Desong, and Mr. Kim attended to Ki-young. The world slowed down for Mr. Kim as he saw what was happening to his family. Chung-suk managed to stab Gi-eun-se, who now couldn't stand. When Mr. Park tried to get the car key, which Gi-eun-se was lying on after Mr. Kim tossed it to him, he covered his nose because of Gi-eun-se's smell. This enraged Mr. Kim, who then stabbed Mr. Park and left the party. A few weeks later, Ki-woo woke up in the hospital, laughing, saying it was an effect of the brain surgery. Ki-woo and Chung-suk attended the court trial, and instead of being imprisoned, they were placed on probation. Later, they visited Ki-young, who is now dead. In their old house, Ki-woo watched the news about what happened and mentioned that no one knows how Mr. Kim disappeared. One day, Ki-woo went to see the house of the Parks, which is now occupied by new residents. At night, the lights flickered, and Ki-woo tried to decipher the secret message. It turns out that Mr. Kim was hiding in the bunker after the incident. A few days later, he buried Moon-gwang's body near the courtyard while everyone was asleep. He secretly went upstairs to get food supplies from the refrigerator. He also sent messages every night using the light switch, hoping Ki-woo would see them. One day, Ki-woo bought the former house of the Parks, and Mr. Kim was finally free to go upstairs. Ki-woo and Mr. Kim embraced. But the truth is, it was just Ki-woo's plan, who is now sitting in their old house. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more video like this.